Hello and welcome to Help for HDTV. Today we have Karen Bucklew on with us and Jamie Holloway, who you guys all probably, of course, know Jamie, but Karen is her wonderful mother. And Karen's husband, Jim, passed away from HD a year and a half ago, around. And Jamie and I were on the phone the other day talking about work stuff, and we started talking about grief. And the one thing about grief is none of us get to walk away from this HD journey without feeling grief. We all are going to go through it, and it lives on, unfortunately, forever. But as Jamie and I started talking, we thought it would be so awesome to have, as Jamie calls Mama Bucklew, on with us to talk about grief a little bit. And so I love what Jamie came up with. This title is Our Imperfect Journey, right? I want to jump in and talk about anticipatory grief to start off. Karen, why don't you talk to us about anticipatory grief? Did you feel at the end of Jim's life that you felt anticipatory grief?
I just think about the journey with Jim. Katie, from the time he was diagnosed, I had to start my grief process. So you start letting go there. I think about the conversations I had with Jim. I asked him, I said, do you want me to sugarcoat stuff for you? Do you want me to tell you like it really is? And he said, don't ever hold back. So I said, okay, I made that promise. And so I remember we're going along through the HD journey, and something was happening to me, and I was changing from the wife into the caregiver
Mhm.
because as Jim got sicker, I had to pick up the pace a little bit, and I was still working full time. And I think about that, having that conversation here at the table, saying to him, Jim, I don't feel like a wife anymore. I feel I'm a caregiver now. And I still, that was a change going on in me. And I didn't recognize it. So many times I was going through grief. I found myself snapping a little bit, and that's to be expected. But I remember Jamie a lot of times pointed out, and she said, Mom, you're grieving the loss of dad, the person that he was, the person who I married. So my grief journey, when I look at it, just isn't about end of life. It is about grief is forever, and we pay that price because we love so dearly.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think about the last week of Jim's life. I remember being very angry at God, because I remember saying, God, if you're merciful, you will not allow Jim to lay in this bed, because that's not what he wanted. He made that very clear from the very day one. No, he didn't. I remember him having, with the Korea, he was having a hard time eating. And I said to him, do you want me to feed you? Do you want me to help? You want me to help you? And he just looked at me with so much anger, and because he was feeling anger and grief too, because he was losing his own self.
Sure.
So you have two people that are grieving at the same time, but for different reasons. And he let me know in uncertain terms that no, I would not do that with him. And it wasn't very long after that Jim took what I consider a turn. And you have to understand, through grief and through love, we want to enable. I want to talk about enabling through that. Jim, I never was good at telling him no. And I remember him being in there on his deathbed, and he said to me, of course, he quit eating by now. It had been a couple of days. And he looked over at me and he said, how about two of those fig Newtons? And I'm thinking aspiration, I'm
Mm.
choking,
Yeah.
I'm thinking all of this in my mind. And I go straight to the kitchen and pick him up two fig Newtons and bring back
Mm.
and break them off in little pieces. And he gums them because Jim didn't have any teeth at that time. Jim was always a heavy smoker, and he could no longer light or smoke. I would hold a vape up to him so he could try to vape. Coffee was another one of his big things. And I remember looking over at the youngest one and saying, wonder if I could syringe this coffee just to moisten, just to keep him comfortable.
Sure.
She got a hard no on that one.
Yeah, I did get a hard no on that. And Jim, he just, I just remember what it was like. We sang, But the worst hurt person feels is when the last breath is took and they leave. And I remember being so angry and I screamed. I felt like I screamed.
Yeah.
I am so mad at you. Maybe it was from the years of Jim's alcoholism. Maybe it was because he left me first. Maybe it was because I felt like him leaving me was his choice. The way he left me was his choice. It was not my choice. But Jim Buckley always did everything the way he wanted to do it. And I went along with it, right or wrong. I was right there with him. He could convince me I was crazy at times when I really wasn't. But I remember the anger that I felt. And somewhere in me, that anger just simmered. I got through the funeral,
Mm.
got through, and then I don't know, Katie, I started doing things that I thought were okay, but the kids thought I might have been a little weird.
Mm.
I started moving furniture in the house, and it was daily, changing the way the table set, changing the way the furniture set, changing out pictures on the wall, keeping the same pictures but moving them from different rooms. I did do some journaling during that time because I didn't want to forget how I felt. I didn't want to forget my memories. Sometimes when we're right in the middle of funeral arrangements and people's and all of this, I didn't want to lose that. I wanted to keep my memories. And so I started journaling during then.
Have you gone back
I,
and read them?
huh?
Have you gone back and read them?
No, nope, not there yet.
Yeah.
Not there yet.
Yeah.
And what, looking at this summer compared to last summer, this summer seems very much more real for me. Last summer was, I know I did things. I know was around the family, but I can't really tell you what I did.
It's like a
Not
blur.
really. It's a blur.
Mm.
I can tell you from some of the things that I did looking back on it. Jim always would say to me, now, Karen, you'll find you another man and you'll get married and go on. And I went, nope, nope, nope. 32 years with you, that did it for me. There'll never be another man. No way, no way. So I went down to the dog pound and I got JJ here
Oh,
uh, to fill in the hurt. That's when I started realizing that I started doing things to fill the void, to fill the hurt.
yeah.
I did a lot of compulsive shopping,
Oh,
was all the time in the stores. I would spend a lot of time bagging up stuff to take to the Goodwill, to unbag it, to put it back, to bag it up. I would take suitcases and pack up clothes for trips and then take them out of the suitcase and hang them up. I kept repeating this pattern. Some of the other stuff I did, I remember the worst thing I did, I guess, well, really wasn't the worst thing. We also, during that first year, Jim and I always went to church together.
mm,
It was important to us.
sure.
But I have two great nieces, and when I went home, I went to see a psychic. And what was hardest for me on that journey was when she said, your loved one hasn't crossed over. And that just freaked me out because I'm like, oh my God. And she said, well, it's because you haven't been able to let go and he's worried about you. And so I listen. And of course, when you're grieving, you take all of that to heart, or I did.
Of
I
course.
did.
Sure.
And so I came back and I told Jamie, I said, do you think Dad crossed over? Do you think he's here because of I haven't let go of him? And Jamie assured me he's crossed over, but I think it was during that episode that I started letting go of him. I was able to go out to the gravesite and put flowers out.
Yeah.
And he was no longer, our mind plays tricks on us sometimes, but in
Hmm.
the early days, I could see him at the end of the table,
Yeah.
drinking coffee, talking.
Hmm. Yeah.
That was weird.
Yeah.
It wasn't hallucinating. It was just old memories that would come into my mind.
Sure.
That was hard. But sometimes I could be driving down the road and Jim would always grab my hand and put our fingers in a lock. And I could feel the first time I went to St. Louis, I could feel him in the car holding my hand. Some people don't understand that.
That's like the thing about grief. Like it's all about like those different perspectives. That day that last week of Dad's life on that Thursday, like I was so tired, Katie, and I was just, and my sister made a comment, and it was like, it was just, I'm sitting in the exact seat that she made this comment, and she said, when Dad dies, Meepers is going to have to come live at your house, and Meepers is the cat. Katie, I'm allergic to cats. And
Mm.
I'm like, what am I going to do with a cat that I'm allergic to? And I can't have her live out in the country because that would not be safe. And so then that leads me into this realization like, once Dad's gone, everything, and Kara made the comment that the house would be sold. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my dad. I'm going to lose the house. I'm going to lose
Mhm.
everything that I know of my dad. It's going to be gone and it's going to never come back. And I remember the grief of that, just feeling like I have went through a lot of different things in my life, but it was a heaviness that was quite different than anything else I'd went through, any other grief, any other, because it was just, Daddy was just in it's a parent. They're part of who you are. I was texting my husband and he was on his way to work. And of course, I was like, I need you, but you have to work and don't worry about coming here. And then the next thing I know, Dad popped up because at that point in Dad's journey, he would sleep and then he would pop up
Mhm.
and you just had to be all
Everybody
hands
out.
on deck. You couldn't stop the falls at that point. You could try to protect, but that's just where you get in a part of that disease. And I remember Daddy trying to come. He had this, I had to go pee in the potty. It did not matter that he had on stuff, protective underwear. He had, like, when he would pop up, Katie, he had this obsession with going to the bathroom to try to urinate. And
Interesting. Yeah, I think
my
that's so
husband,
common.
yes. And I think it is too, the more I talk
And
to
Dad
people.
was strong.
And he was very strong at that point. And
They are strong.
um,
Yeah.
he tried to mow me over because I was like, Daddy, when I was trying to block the doorway because he was so unstable. He was really starting to weaken at this point. This was Thursday, and by Friday, he went into a coma. But he came and tried to like push past me. And I just remember my husband coming in behind me and physically bracing me as my dad tried to push me over. And I just remember feeling like the whole weight of what I felt was just shared all of a sudden. And it was unlike anything I have experienced in my marriage to my husband, the children, HD diagnosis, all that, nothing compared to that moment of my husband physically being there in such a vulnerable place for me. And then I thought to myself, and she is losing her husband. She is losing him. I
Yeah.
have this comfort in my own husband and she's losing him. I have my two children. I have my husband. I have my sister and I have my mom. And yes, I'm losing my dad. But your parent is a very different role than your spouse and your child. And it's not that my grief toward about my dad didn't matter. It was
Of course
that
not.
my mom's pain and not having the support like I had to be mindful of that and to give her more grace throughout this journey.